The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X-Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, and the X-Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern. That's 7 p.m. Pacific until 11 p.m. Pacific. Right here on the Talkstar Radio Network from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the Talkstar Radio Network. My producer tonight at the master control of the Talkstar Radio Network in Titusville, Florida, is the one and only Senor Alec. Hey, Alec, nice working with you, buddy. On tonight's show, we'll be going to a pre-recorded interview that I did with Michael Horn. Now, Billy Meier, who is over in Switzerland, is known for two topics. Number one, ufology. He's got some rather unique photographs of UFOs that he claims are legitimate. And he's known by very few as a prophet. His predictions over the years have been much more, how should I say this, accurate than Edgar Cayce or even Nostradamus. Billy Meier has had attempts on his life, and yet he doesn't get the recognition that I believe he should. So I'm going to be playing an interview that I did with Michael Horn, because Michael Horn is the featured writer in this month's edition of the X-Chronicles newspaper. In fact, the entire first page and following pages is an article that Michael Horn did on Billy Meier. And of course, if you'd like to get to this month's issue of the X-Chronicles or any of the past 19 that we've actually posted, you can go to www.scribd.com/X-Zone Radio TV. The cost of the X-Chronicles at Scribd is $1.50. At your newsstand, it's $4.95, so the choice is yours. Save a tree. This is what we're doing, is we're cutting back on the print in order to do it electronically, in order to cut off cutting down trees. There. 1-877-528-8255 is my toll-free number. xzone@talkstarradio.com is our email address. On MSN Messenger, talkstarradio@hotmail.com, and our website, xzoneradio.com and xzonetv.com. By the way, we indoctrinated two people into the X-Zone or woo-woos over the night period when we're off. You know, we're off during the day, so I guess it's over the day. First of all, we indoctrinated the one and only Harry Walther, who kind of shot himself in the foot last night here on the show, and we also indoctrinated Jason Rand, whose real name is Paul Bondora, as well as Cal Korff. Now, these three gentlemen will not be returning to the show because I believe that they tried to pull the wool over your eyes. They outright lied to us. So why would we want these type of people on our show? We don't. Credible, honest, people who do things from the heart, those are the people I want here on the X-Zone, not charlatans, liars, and frauds. When I come back from this 2-minute commercial break, we'll be going to my interview with Michael Horn as the X-Zone commences for Tuesday, June the 9th in the year 2009, right here in the X Zone.
Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine like hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining room can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you're visiting, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, old Florida cuisine at its best. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Are you interested in the paranormal, ghosts, UFOs, or psychic phenomenon? Join me, Tim Bartley, co-host of Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, coming mid-January 2017 to the XZBN. We will channel spirits live and talk to them, revealing all kinds of amazing information. Spiritual attachments will be found and removed on the show, and so much more. To find out when you can listen to Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, visit www.xzbn.net for listeners on both sides of the veil.
Michael Horn is my guest this hour, Exonation. He is the North American Authorized Representative for Billy Meier. His website is www.theyfly.com. And Mike, welcome back to the Exxon, old friend. How are you doing tonight?
Fine, Rob. Thank you for having me on again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I understand that you heard the interview last night with Derek Bartholomew. And I'd like to get your feedback on it.
Yes, I listened to it today on the iTunes archive, and I could launch into it, or I would say first, is there anything that comes to mind for you, particularly any point he raised that you think I should address first? Because I made some notes here. And
I certainly would. I'd like you to address the fact or the part that he said that the photographs.
Asket and Nero photographs?
Yes.
It was the first thing I wrote down practically. Actually, the second thing. Well, I have to couch this and say this, and I'm going to try to say this as clearly as I can. If Mr. Bartholomew and any and all of the other skeptics had done any homework, and that means had they accepted my offer to them to provide them, or at least to make available if they wanted to purchase it, the various books and DVDs and films of this, Meier case that documented before they made claims about things that they clearly didn't know, had not researched, and I'm not being hyperbolic at all, had not researched, they would not have made the foolish statements, and in some cases outright lies, that Derek repeated last night. The Asket photo controversy pertains to the pictures that were attributed, that Meier took, and that he said he had taken photographs of Asket and Nero. Mm-hmm. Subsequently, there was a controversy, and some of these photographs turn out to be, if not exactly, some type of composite of the Dean Martin dancers I don't know, from the 60s or 70s or whatever, two people in particular. What Derek doesn't know, and what a lot of people didn't know, was that in the 39th contact, and that was on December 3rd, 1975, something like 13 years, I think it was, before this controversy erupted, Meier is talking with Ptah, one of the, we'll just say alleged one-time extraterrestrials. And there is a transcript of this particular 3-4 sentences, and it goes like this. Ptah says to Meier, 13 years before this controversy, "It was rather extraordinary that you were given permission to take photos of Asket and Nira, since we've discovered terrestrial females who resemble them very closely and who, interestingly enough, also work together in a community of interests." Billy responds, he says, "Boy, that's a shame. But the women, the doubles of Asket and Nira, where are they?" Ptah responds, "In America." Billy, "Can you tell me their address and other details about them?" Ptah says, "I would rather not do so for various reasons." Now let me explain this. In many cases, the Plejaran people knew that Billy was going to be walking into all sorts of rotating blades in the course of his mission, in the course of his life, things that lay in his future that he did not know about. They knew that this would eventually turn into a controversy when other parties got a hold of the photographs and manipulated them. I'm not going to sit here and read off lengthy, internet addresses, but anybody that's interested can write me. I'll send them. There's a whole article on this that was published by Michael Hessemann, a German researcher, and he also addresses how it was impossible that these were the photos that Meier actually took, and that they were not taken off of a TV screen. There's a lot on this. So what I'm driving at is this. Meier disavowed a number of photographs. Ultimately, it was the Asket and Nira ones. There were some dinosaur photos. There was a pterodactyl illustration thing. And there were some photos allegedly taken in space. Now, what he said was, I did take photos of Asket and Nira. I did take photos in space. I took all sorts of stuff. But because he was never in complete control of the films, once he took his films, he turned them over to a shop to send them out for development. It was discovered that some of those photos either were stolen, as it was the case with the films, or they came back altered and manipulated, and Meier would simply take the photos back, he'd look through them, throw them in a box, he would throw them in shoe boxes, and he had hundreds of photos. Now you'll notice, and I'll be happy to come back to this as much as you want, but let me go to this point. I noticed in the interview, Derek was trying to make a big deal about the pterodactyl photo or whatever.
Yeah.
He would not fully address the photos that he pulled out and put into our film and said, these are photos, either from photos or from films of Meier, that are of the same tree, and it's a model tree, and the UFOs are model UFOs, and look at these lines here, it shows they're so similar, they're the same tree. When I busted him on that, and I said, will you please, everybody, look at the rest of the tree. There's nothing similar about the rest of these trees. Number one, they're obviously not the same tree. Number two, the burden of proof is on him. Would you please show us a model tree? In the 8+ years that I have challenged these people, and I can explain this story too, and how the challenge came about and how they accepted it, they have been unable to produce one photograph of a model tree, let alone anything even close to the trees in Meier's photos. They have been unable to produce one photo of a model UFO next to a model or miniature tree. Now remember, Derek prides himself on being in post-production in the television industry. He has been involved in this thing for 6 years or whatever. He has the resources of this organization, which is internationally affiliated, and he cannot produce one photo, even of a model tree, to back it up. So he did have to retract that. He says on one hand that he is not in a position to call the case a hoax, but he states on the other hand that Meier used models to take his photographs. That means that Meier hoaxed his photos and films. So this drives me a little nuts because it's so amateurish, it is so incompetent as well as inaccurate, that I don't know how he can still even want to come forward and humiliate himself and his organization with this. We have posted on my website the article where I claim he's retracted, and I have his own quote there. We show illustrations of what he put in the film. Interestingly enough, Derek was the only person that we interviewed who we didn't interview. He prepared a script, And remember, he's had something like 6 years or 6 years to do this, and he presented it with no questions and answers to speak of. There were 2 questions at the end where I actually said to him, so do you say Meier did this with models? And he says, yes. That means he's saying Meier hoaxed it, but then he wants to say he isn't saying that. And then when I say, well, will you produce the tree or produce a model, they can't do it, and they try to then slander Billy Meier over it instead of their own abysmal incompetence. Here's the problem with this type of so-called research. These are people who have never gotten off their butts and gone to Switzerland to see the environment, to see the actual locations where some of the photos and films and sound recordings were made. They've interviewed nobody. Last night he dismisses 17 people who passed lie detector tests, 100% accuracy, including Meier and his ex-wife, about the truthfulness of this case. Now, if this was a crime scene and there were 17 witnesses, don't you think that the detectives would interview those people, especially
Definitely.
if they... I mean, what's going on here with this kind of incompetence? And this is what has driven me nuts. It always makes me feel like I'm attacking the person. I'm really attacking the unbelievable level of unprofessionalism and ineptitude that has characterized the skeptical, attack on the case. He said last night that he didn't retract his statement and that James Randi didn't retract his. The problem is I have James Randi's, I think I forwarded to you some links.
Yes.
They were put up by IIG where I had correspondence with James Randi. He says, this is a farce that any child can see through. Then in another email he says, I never said it was a hoax. Now, here's something really interesting, and I haven't pushed this point very much, but I brought it up a few years ago. Both James Randi and the IIG people have various financial rewards for a paranormal claim that gets proved.
Right.
And to do that, you submit your stuff to them. You have to pass their particular tests. Now, I'm making this statement on an ethical ground. I don't care, frankly, to push anything about the money with people who aren't going to pay for things off anyhow. But here's the problem. James Randi called the case a farce, which you look in the synonyms, that means it's a hoax.
Yes, it is.
And then he retracted it. He passed judgment that it was first a hoax and then it wasn't. I say morally and ethically he should have written Billy Meier a check at that point because he had made a statement and then he retracted it.
Good
now,
point,
if he said,
Mike. Good
pardon?
point. Good point.
Yes, of course. That morally and ethically means he says, I have made the judgment on this. This is a hoax. Then he says, I never said it. That's a retraction. That means that for a person who puts up a substantial, supposedly $1 million for a proof of the paranormal, to declare that something's a hoax and then to retract it, excuse me, if you have any substance as a human being with any integrity, character, morals, and ethics, you write a check. And you said, excuse me, I've retracted that claim. Here you go. Either that or you lay out how and why you know it's a hoax and you don't retract your statement. The same thing here with Derek Bartholomew and IIG. They have a, I don't know, $10,000 or $50,000 reward or something or other. Derek claimed it's a hoax. He says it in the film that he used models. He says it over and over. And then we show that he's wrong. He basically has to retract that. Where's the check to Billy Meier? You see, this isn't about a pterodactyl drawing or something that somebody else could have done. We're talking about Meier's still irreproducible photographic and film evidence. And these are the people that attacked it. You would have thought that if you have 17 people that have thereby passed lie detector tests, 5 other photographers, and these people are living in Switzerland, they're available, that before you go out and make protestations and claim that this is a hoax and we've debunked it, you might want to talk to people. Unfortunately, what the skeptics do here is they say any and everything that they have personally not seen, there's no proof or validity for it, which means that 99.999% of history doesn't exist because they didn't witness it. This is not how mature, objective, scientifically oriented people go about proving or disproving or basically trying to find the truth.
Mike, you and I have to take a commercial break, my friend.
Surely.
I agree with you that if you say something's a hoax and then you retract it, what you're basically doing is saying no, it's real. And if that is part of the condition for this $1 million check, then Billy should have gotten it. Michael Horn and I return on the other side of this commercial break. For more information on Billy Meier and Michael Horn, visit www.theyfly.com. That's www.theyfly.com. My name's Rob McConnell. This is the X-Zone, right here on...
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. You're listening to us live and around the world on Talkstar Radio Network from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Michael Horn is my special guest. His website is www.theyfly.com. But I'd just like to take a couple of minutes before we get back to Michael to remind everyone who has a cat or dog that we're coming into heartworm season. And this is a press release that was issued yesterday from the Hamilton Academy of Veterinary Medicine. The topic is heartworm threat from Hurricane Katrina dogs coming into Canada for adoption. The Hamilton Academy of Veterinary Medicine would like to remind cat and dog owners in the city, surrounding area, province, country, and to our neighbors in the south, with the return of spring and mosquitoes, it's time again to have your pets tested for heartworm and start them on their monthly heartworm prevention. The members of the HAVM are extremely concerned. In 2008, there was a 10-fold increase in the number of seen and treated cases of heartworm disease in Hamilton. This dramatic increase was particularly evident in dogs that were imported into Canada from heartworm endemic areas of the United States, specifically but not limited to the state of Louisiana. If you adopted a dog from any source that was from the United States as a hurricane rescue dog, it is imperative that you see a veterinarian and discuss the current protocol to ensure that your pet is heartworm negative and how to protect them in the future. Even if you were told that your dog was tested negative prior to adoption, it is still imperative that you see a veterinarian. Many of these dogs were imported only having had one negative heartworm test. Now, the American Heartworm Society's current protocol for dogs 8 months of age and older coming from heartworm endemic areas requires that the dog have 3 negative heartworm tests. The initial test should be followed up with a second test at 4 months, and the final test at 9 months after the initial test. During this period, the dog should also be on a monthly worm preventative. The HAVM does not want to see any family lose their family pet to this preventable disease. It is still possible for us to control this disease. Number 1, have your dog. If you have a dog, see your veterinarian now for a heartworm test. Number 2, if you have adopted a hurricane dog, see your veterinarian and advise them that this is a hurricane dog or that the dog came from the state of Louisiana. Number 3, if you're planning to adopt a hurricane dog or any dog from a heartworm endemic area of the United States, beware that unless they have had 3 negative heartworm tests and have been on monthly preventative during the entire time, there is a very good chance that they may be heartworm positive. Heartworm is difficult and very expensive to treat, Exonation. If you're contemplating adopting a dog from Louisiana, it is important to ask about the dog's testing and treatment before you commit. Your veterinarian is your very best resource for understanding and managing this disease, because all veterinarians really do care about your pets. And this is from the Hamilton Academy of Veterinary Medicine. Dr. Michael Mugavera was on with us yesterday, and the Academy's website is hamiltonvetsacademy.ca. That's www.hamiltonvetsacademy.ca. Michael Horn is with us. Mike, thanks very much for allowing me to get that message into our listeners. Where did we leave off?
Well, I've been pointing out a few things, and I've probably concluded the points I was making at the time, but I'd be happy to tell you a couple more things.
Please, Mike.
Yeah. Derek said that he had not falsified my email. I sent you links. They actually did. This kind of sounds a little petty to have to go over it, but I have to do this for a simple reason. The credibility of those who either represent or oppose the case has to be established for anybody that cares. Mm-hmm. He lied over the air last night about that, among other things, and they have my full email posted on one page and the one that he redacted and edited on another, and then he says he hadn't edited it. So I don't know how people do that. He claimed that he was speaking about getting false information from my website. What happened was I found that I had made a typo in my own transferring of information, and I put up the correct document. I left both up so that it would not look like I was trying to trick anybody by removing evidence that I had made a mistake. This had to do with Marcel Vogel's analysis of Meier's metal samples. I offered the video on that to the people at CFI and West and IIG years ago. They declined, and so he makes a presentation in the film based not upon researching Marcel Vogel, but only upon a paragraph or two out of one of my own articles on the Internet. And it was the one article, I haven't found too many, where I had transposed words, and he bases his analysis of Marcel Vogel on that. That is beyond amateurish. It's incompetent to the highest degree. So the other thing was he claimed that the therapist in the movie said that Meier possessed schizotypal traits. No, she's described schizotypal behavior and those traits, and we deliberately put that in next to me, next to Meier, because people are going to start thinking, well, these people are crazy. What's it like? What would crazy people say? She said, and remember, she says, it doesn't make the claims untrue. She can't say that somebody has or hasn't had those experiences, but that there are people, and there are plenty of them, if you will, in the New Age and UFO community that make crazy claims that are probably schizotypal.
I remember asking or commenting to Derek after he said that. I said, well, isn't that like, Billy Meier shooting himself in the foot by putting
That isn't what she said at all. And Meier was acting in self-defense when, as a young person, and not even, I think, barely in his teens or earlier, he was assaulted by a woman who was kind of a crazy woman. He defended himself, but it's going to be her word against his, so he was in trouble, and this kind of thing goes down. Derek was, talking about, well, he was institutionalized. I wonder if Derek ever knew of anybody named Mahatma Gandhi, perhaps Martin Luther King or Nelson Mandela, all of whom, among many other people, were incarcerated, were beaten, were tried, were called all sorts of things. Meier came back to Switzerland voluntarily because he wanted to get that cleared up out of his record. Derek Bartholomew criticizes Meier for leaving the French Foreign Legion when he's a young man. He joins it when he's 15 or 16. He leaves it shortly thereafter because he realized this is a place where people are being trained to kill. This is not for me. Mm-hmm. And he walked out across the desert. The only people ever known to successfully leave the French Foreign Legion walking out across the desert. Derek Bartholomew got his information wrong when he was talking about the nuclear plant. He's correct that I had put up an August 12, 2003 thing. And when he made his presentation for our film, his scripted presentation, I went back to double check on it. And the Internet, they had loaded an earlier document where they had actually shut down that plant in order to prevent an accident. And literally what Meier says in the prophecy is if people are attentive, the accident can be prevented. He never said there will be an accident, and that's a very unusual prophecy. He says there's a danger of an accident at the nuclear power plant near Lyon, and if people are attentive, the accident will be prevented. That's a very detailed thing to say. You could either say, well, there could be an accident somewhere. Why would you say there won't be an accident unless you actually spell out the kind of circumstances under which the prevention of the accident takes place, and that's a matter of record. There's so much here, it makes me just jump up and down. When the other thing that bothered me just a little personally is when he answered your question saying, I'm in it for the money. I should, just clear it up for my own reputation. I first got involved in the Meier case 30 years ago when I got the first photo book. That's in 79. In 86, I get the 1,800 pages of transcripts, and I start researching everything I can from that point on my own dime, totally at my own cost. The film that I produced with my partner, we did that on our own money. I travel on my own dime. I spend my time doing radio interviews or writing articles, fighting with skeptics, totally on my own dime, and I'm not compensated by Billy Meier, Figu, or anybody over there at all. I signed a contract that I deliberately said I would do this voluntarily, just to prevent the kind of defamation and slander and libel that people like Derek Bartholomew throw around because they're uneducated and they don't really research. They come into something with their minds made up, and then they try and make everything fit.
All right, let me ask you this, Mike. Why does Derek and the IIG go out of their way to attack people or to try to debunk people like Billy Meier?
Well, let me say in all fairness here, I don't mind giving the words due. I called up in 2001, I called up this organization, CFI West, because I knew that they were associated with James Randi and a skeptic organization, and James Randi had been critical of the Meier case. And I said, hey, I've got some photos and films I'd like you to see. It's a UFO case. And they said, hold on, you want to talk to Vaughn Reese. That's the man who held the position that Derek does right now. And it's really the same position. They both were volunteers there. I don't know why Derek was trying to distance himself so much from Vaughn. Vaughn had me come in, and during our meeting, when I showed him the photos and films, Vaughn said, and I did make notes of this, he said, this is an easily duplicated hoax. And I said to him at that point, if that's the case, would you be willing to duplicate one photo of Meier's and one film? He said, yeah, I can do that. I said, fine. I spoke to him on the phone 2 times after that and went back in once. Then he said they were moving or something, and he hadn't gotten around to it. Finally, literally 2 or 3 years later, they came out with a series of photographs of a small model that looked nothing, of course, like Meier's. And he said, we've duplicated the effect. And I said, well, excuse me, Vaughn, I can see the effect duplicated in the sci-fi movie. You were going to duplicate his photos, like it circles a tree, it's here, there's a film. And so I happened to have gone on the Art Bell show at that time, and Vaughn called in because I was explaining all this. And Art Bell said to him, you've got photos? He says, yeah. He says, will you submit them to the same testing that Billy Meier's photos were submitted to? And he says, no. And Art Bell said, goodbye. And that was the end of Vaughn Reese. And then his own organization got all over him and fired him and brought in Derek, who's actually fared less well in this whole thing because he's got this belligerent, arrogant attitude coupled with enormous ineptitude and getting everything wrong. So they wanted to prove that this was a hoax. And everything that they've put up, we've debunked. We've shown you don't have your information even correct. Why hasn't any of you taken the time and trouble? If I, as a self-employed person with no job to get a vacation off of, would go, and this, I've been to Switzerland 10 times. I've talked to people who've witnessed 12 of the assassination attempts. Derek impugns their integrity. Well, we don't have any witnesses. Yes, we do. I've talked to them. I know these people after 10 years.
I believe he also said that there's no police reports or evidence of these.
What happened was I did talk to them about that, and they said, one time a bullet came through the windshield of Billy's car, so of course we went to file the police report because they file them. And they said, well, maybe this, maybe it was a stone. And they said, no, take a look. And let's remember, Wendell Stevens was sitting next to Billy when there was an assassination attempt, a rifle bullet that missed blowing his head off. They took photographs of it in the wall. Some of these are famous photographs. Billy's sitting there, and Wendell's got his finger pointing to the bullet. Wendell, retired lieutenant colonel from the Air Force, was there and witnessed the attempt. Now, the police might not take it too seriously because Swiss intelligence and the CIA have, for over 30 years, monitored everything going on at Meier's place. They've taken their own photos of the UFOs, and they don't want this getting out. This is the most suppressed story in human history, bar none. Interestingly enough, about 7 years ago, something like that, a skeptic in the general area where Meier lives, a guy who's married, he and his wife have thought that Meier was a nutcase and the devil and all. He also was a photographer, and he went out on 2 occasions, and he photographed the Pleiar and Beam ships of Meier's, and he sent him the 7 photographs in a letter. He says, I don't want to give my name because if my wife finds out, I'm in trouble, but you're telling the truth. I have photographed these, and I sent you a link to that. It's on the web from Switzerland. And he then went and met with Billy, and he said, Mr. Meier, he explained to him all about the extraterrestrial contacts and everything. He says, this is a man that's very knowledgeable. I thought he might just be a cunning, charlatan, but he's a very knowledgeable man. See, in order to take the skeptics at all seriously, and in my opinion, it's not even worth considering, you have to now make another leap that this is a conspiracy theory of 17 people who pass lie detector tests, 12 witnesses to the assassination, 5 other photographers, a skeptic who takes the photograph. What about Pobol Chang, the retired UN diplomat who's in our film, who says, I was there, I saw all these ships, I saw one of the extraterrestrials. This is a woman who represented her country in the UN, for goodness sake. Why hasn't Derek Bartholomew sought her out? Why didn't he seek out the expert consultant to the U.S. Special Forces who's in our film, who basically says they're telling the truth?
Maybe they don't want to admit that it is the truth, because as you and I have talked before, Mike,
yes,
the people maintaining the conspiracy on the UFO phenomenon is the UFO community itself.
And the skeptics, both. You're right.
Yeah. Mike, stand by, friend. You and I have to take a commercial break. We'll be right back. Michael Horn is our special guest, www.theyfly.com. I'll be back on the other side of this break as the X Zone continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell, and my guest this hour, Michael Horn. Don't go away.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
19 Sergeant Central. 19 Sergeant, check. Officers on the scene.
Hi, I'm Larry Lawson, host of Paranormal Stakeout. With over 36 years in law enforcement, I have learned a few things. The most important is the proper gathering and preservation of evidence is vital to putting the bad guy behind bars. It's no different in the world of paranormal investigation. Whether it's the search for the afterlife, cryptozoology, UFOs, and extraterrestrials, how we gather the evidence, preserve that evidence, and present it to a jury of our peers will make the ultimate difference in proving the existence of worlds and entities that are beyond our imagination. Join me, Larry Lawson, every week on Paranormal Stakeout when, along with my guests, we'll take a journey to prove with indisputable evidence what man has struggled to believe for centuries. Go to xzbn.net for the broadcast schedule and check me out at paranormalstakeout.com.
True healing must address 4 levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, for us to live joyful and productive lives. We tend to treat 3 of the 4, leaving the spiritual languishing. If you're tired of the same dysfunctional patterns cropping up in your life, Soul Balancing is for you. Trixie Phelps, owner and founder of Soul Balancing, is a naturally gifted energy healer trained in numerous esoteric forms, including shamanism. Trixie has created a powerful modality that safely and effectively clears your energetic field. A soul balancing session can remove interference, heal trauma, and restore your hope. Contact Trixie for a life-changing long-distance session today, www.soulbalancing.world.
Michael Horn is my special guest, www.theyfly.com. Michael, what was this meeting that apparently had ruffled the feathers of the IIG that you apparently had with one of their members or a past member?
Right, that's what I was speaking about. I had called up. They had directed me to this man, Von Rees. I went in. He was the man who said this is an easily duplicated hoax.
So wait a minute. This guy, Von Rees, was the contact person that you had?
Von Rees was working at Center for Inquiry West. Yes, of course. I went to their building. I mean, this is not something that happened, in any mysterious way. I made an appointment with the guy. I went in. I had phone calls with him and one more in-person visit. He was going to duplicate this. And I said, fine, if you're going to show me this is a hoax, I don't want to run around and represent a hoax. Show me. Oh, no problem. We'll do that. This is an easily duplicated hoax. Also, and I can come back to that, but what Derek neglected to mention last night was when Derek, went and contacted Volker Engel and Mark Wiegert from Uncharted Territory. And that Uncharted Territory is the company that won the Academy Award for Special Effects in Independence Day. And he went to them after the film was out and after I was thrashing him in my article showing that he was an incompetent. He went to them to try to get them to recant what they told me. I brought the films to them, too, to these two guys, the Academy Award-winning special effects guys, and I had a witness. He was a producer, and I still know him. I mean, this is all stuff that's real easy to validate. And they said, those aren't models. We know models. If we were going to try to duplicate that, we'd have to go to CGI. So after taking all this beating, after he comes out and has to basically retract his premise on hoaxing, he goes to these guys, at least by email, and says, tell me did you really say that? Michael Horn said this, that. And they said, well, based on what we saw, this would be very impossible to do. It would require a crane and wires, and based on the time when these films were made and everything, we'd have to say it was very hard, probably even impossible to hoax. Special effects guys from the film industry, Academy Award winners, and so we then get Derek Bartholomew trying to tell us that it's a hoax, and he got clobbered by these guys, and they weren't taking sides. They are skeptics about UFOs, but they said, hey, we just have to be honest. We can do this with computer graphics, but those are not models. That's not how it was done. Every which way you turn, when you go to people that are credible and that can think their way through it and are open-minded to either have it be true or not true, you come down with people saying, well, wait, this is legit. We don't know how come we don't know about it, why we haven't heard about it, et cetera, but this is legit. He and his association, to get back to your question, are invested in making it not real because they're kind of like a cult. They determine in advance that something has to be a hoax or phony or whatever, and then they try to push it into that. They made an enormous mistake here by getting a kid, basically, to do a man's work.
And that was the interview I had earlier in the month of May with Michael Horn, talking about Billy Meier and the skepticism that goes along with being a person who talks your mind, talks your heart, and says, hey, I've seen a UFO and here are the pictures. When I come back from the news at the top of the hour, I'll be joined by Patrick Cook for this month's edition of the Cook Report as the X Zone continues right here on